Hi, everybody. Today's guest is Dierdre Wolownick. She's an author, mother, professor, marathoner, musician, and climber. So we have a lot to unpack today. Dierdre is originally from New York City. She has taught 5 foreign languages on 3 continents for 44 years. Her written in books and magazines worldwide has won awards. I should say that was, okay, I'll repeat that. Okay, we start from the beginning. Hello, everybody. Today's guest, Dierdre Wolownick, is an author, mother, professor, marathoner, musician, and climber. Dierdre is originally from New York City. She has taught 5 foreign languages on 3 continents for 44 years. Her writing in books and magazines worldwide has won awards, and her independent publishing company produced several award winners and international sellers. At 55, she began running and has done marathons, half marathons, and other races. At 59, she began rock climbing. And at 66, she became the oldest woman to climb Yosemite's El Capitan, the iconic 3,200-foot granite wall in Yosemite National Park. In 2021, she celebrated her 70th birthday by going to what's known as El Cap again and camping on the summit. Dierdre has just returned from a 3-country speaking tour in Europe, and in 2023, the documentary about her life, Climbing into Life, will be featured at film festivals across the country. Welcome to the show, Dierdre.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
My pleasure. Some people may know you or heard about you because your son Alex is very well known and has an Oscar-winning documentary called Free Solo, where he climbed what you climbed without a rope. And so we'll talk about what this climbing is with a rope, without the rope, and what this all means to non-climbers. And when we first connected, you told me about Alex's Free Solo documentary, and I was like super excited because I had seen it and I've been used to be a climber. So I know about all this. I didn't climb anything that complicated, but at least I was like, oh, that's the mom behind the face. But since our show is about women over 50, 60 and beyond, we're focusing more on the woman behind the scene, and this is you.
That's me.
What is one of your strengths, Dierdre?
One of my strengths, I would have to say tenacity, stick-to-itiveness.
Okay, all right. When did you notice that you had that strength?
Oh, I've always been like that.
Always like that. So going back to, we had this amazing introduction about so much to unpack. You're from New York City.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us about who you were as a child so people can picture who you are.
Well, I was very, very different then than I am now. Very different. My mother was handicapped on that. I was supposed to stay home, to, not take care of her, but help her. I was her arms and legs, if you will. And so I was very quiet. I stayed home a lot. I didn't have a whole lot of friends because I was always home. I developed more cerebral outlets for my passions. I was a musician. I played piano and a lot of instruments. I used to write, as far back as like 1st grade, 2nd grade. I was always writing. And so I was very, very different. I never really moved into the physical outdoor world until recently.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Now, you have any brothers and sisters?
I have an older brother.
Okay. And is he still anywhere near close to you? Does he do what you do, or who is he?
He doesn't do any of the outdoor stuff, but he does ski every winter, which is definitely outdoor. He's in the San Diego area.
Oh, fun. Very cool. So you get to see him more often.
Once in a while. It's like 700 miles from my house, so not that often. Okay. I just got back from there this week, in fact.
Yeah. So where do you live now?
In Sacramento, the Sacramento area.
Sacramento area. How cool. So one brother, you're at home with taking care of the family. You're learning how many languages? How
Well,
many
now, back then in New York City, this is after World War II. The city was overrun with immigrants, refugees, people escaping the war, and then they all had kids, and so I grew up using lots of languages. It was a wonderful way to grow up. If I went to my friend Teresa's house, I had to be sociable with the grandparents and be respectful in Slovak. And when I went to Alessandra's house, I had to use a little bit of Italian. So that was my world. And so now I think I'm working on number 9 right now.
So give me how many? So Italian, Slovak, English.
But, well, no, I don't know Slovak. That was gone long, long time ago.
Okay.
French, Spanish, Italian, and Japanese were kind of fluent. I mean, French, Spanish, Italian were fluent, totally. Japanese, kind of like house Japanese, mom Japanese. I can speak it just fine. And then I speak enough German and what else? Polish. Polish was in the family. It's a Polish American family. And Greek. Greek is my latest because I've been traveling through Greece quite a bit.
I saw this on your Instagram. I'm
Yeah.
following you. It's like, where is it? It's like, not where is
like Waldo.
Waldo? No, where's Dierdre this week? And it's such a wonderful, rich life that has translated out of what you started with your fitness. That is just amazing. And meeting all these fun and interesting people and learning about them. Now, you also play instruments.
Yes. Yes, I've always been a musician, a performing musician all my life. I play piano and anything that has a keyboard, like accordion or xylophone or whatever, organ. I used to play at the school graduations when I was teaching high school. Up in the loft, I play the organ. I play guitar, I play flute, a lot of instruments. And that kind of arose from growing up in New York City. I used to go see all the greats in Central Park and in Lincoln Center and all that. And I always wanted to conduct an orchestra, but I knew way back then, I knew that you had to have credentials to do that. You had to have an invitation from somebody important. But as it turned out, you don't. Because back in 1990, I created my own orchestra in West Sacramento, which was not a city yet back then. It was a little burg, an offshoot of Sacramento. There was nothing there. And I didn't want to raise my kids that way in a place that had no culture of any kind. So I created the West Sacramento Community Orchestra, and I conducted that for 4 years, I think, 4.5 years.
How do you teach yourself to conduct?
Well, I watched all these greats all those years, in the park and in Lincoln Center and concerts all over the city. New York City is amazing for that. Whatever interests you, it's there in spades. It's there all over the place. So I went to a lot of concerts. I watched them very carefully. And of course, I played in the school orchestra in high school. And I've always performed on the piano and other instruments, like family weddings, things like that. And little local orchestras. I play the flute or clarinet. So I watched very carefully. I'm an observer, and you can learn a lot just by watching the greats, just by watching or copying, copying the masters. If you want to learn how to paint, one of the best ways, because I paint as well. And I went through many years where I copied all the masters, and it's a wonderful way to learn about mixing colors, about how to apply the paint, so whatever you want to do in life. And it's never too late. I mean, a lot of this stuff I learned later in life. Whatever you want to do in life, it's out there, it's available. You have the sum of human knowledge at your fingertips on a computer. Whatever interests you, you can learn it. And you should. You should get out there and, follow your dream, your bliss, whatever you want to call that, because it's very rewarding.
Somebody listening to this might say, yeah, you got all the time in the world over there, Dierdre. I don't have that much time.
I did not. When I was doing the orchestra, I was working full time. I was working, teaching college more than full time. I had 2 children. I had a failing marriage. We were going through a divorce. And I was also teaching part time. Yeah. And I was also writing. So no, I don't believe that for 1 second that you don't have enough time. I didn't either. I didn't have enough time to train to go run marathons either. Nonetheless, if you want to do it enough, you will carve out the time. You will make the time, if you want to badly enough.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I was like, because that's what I oftentimes hear is like, oh yeah, it's
I don't
you.
have time. Yeah.
I'm like, no, I just really want it that much that I'm going
Right,
to
right,
make that time, just like you said.
right. Turn off the thing. Television is a mind waster and a time waster. Turn off the computer, the what do you call it, the social media. That's a time waster, extravagant time waster. We don't realize. We go online, and next thing we know, it's 2 hours later. It's a time waster. Turn all that stuff off. When we had children, both of us decided that we would not have a television in the house, and so they grew up without it. And I mean, there was a little one in our bedroom just in case we needed it, but it wasn't part of our life,
Mhm.
especially not our social life. I've been in many houses where the kids all get there and they all pop themselves in front of the television, and that's what they do. That's
Yep.
not doing. That's not doing. That's avoiding doing. You want to
Mhm.
get out and do stuff. Turn all that stuff off. Don't make it an option. That really saddens me greatly that people just accept that they have to have a television. When people come to my door and solicitors and for one streaming system or TV system or another, they say, which system do you use? And I say, I don't have television. They don't even understand what I mean. They really don't. I have to explain. No, there's no piece of furniture or box or whatever I don't have that.
Mhm.
Oh, that does not compute with people. And there's so little of value worth watching. I
Very
mean,
true.
there's so little of value on television that, don't let it steal your life. That's the message. I mean, don't let it steal your life, because it will very easily.
Very easily. And I hear that too from some of my clients that say, I just don't have the time. And I go
Yeah,
back and
right.
I say, how
Right.
much time do you spend scrolling? How
Yes.
much time do you spend just flipping from channel to channel?
Right. Right.
But we've been, and that's a good point, we've been really indoctrinated with
Yes.
this
Yes.
is part of it has to be.
Brainwashed. We have been brainwashed to believe that you have to have a television.
Yep.
Your life is empty without it. No,
Yeah.
your life is empty with it. I'm sorry.
Because otherwise, Deirdre wouldn't be doing all those amazing things
That's it.
she has
That's
doing.
exactly right. I would not have time. Exactly.
Because then you would sit at home, knit or whatever you would do, and maybe painting watching a show,
Mhm,
but you're
mhm,
not.
mhm.
And then it's a good example of grabbing life by the horns
Yeah,
and doing what you want to do, because you learn to swim in your 40s.
right, right. When we bought this house, it had a pool, and I had little children, and so I said, okay, well, I have to know how to do this. If my kids, little children, are going to be out there, I want to be capable. And I always envied people who could swim. I grew up in New York City. There were no pools around. If you went to the ocean, it was waves crashing on you. You couldn't learn to swim that way. So I just never learned to swim. It was never part of my high school or anything.
Mhm.
So I every day I went out there in the afternoon and taught myself how to swim.
But how did you learn? How did you know the strokes, or
Oh,
how
I,
did?
I had watched people all my life. I knew what they did.
Okay,
But
okay,
my big issue is breathing. My biggest issue is breathing, whether it's in water or air. That's my
or
biggest
air.
issue, because my lungs are shot. Both of my parents smoked all the time. And so our house was a cloud of gray smoke all the time. And so my
Mm.
lungs are really shot. So, I knew what to do. I just had never done it, so I just had to teach myself how, practice.
You know, I learned swimming 7 years ago.
Good for you.
Oh,
Good
I'm
for you.
61.
Good for you.
And I was in a competition for a duathlon, and I won the entrance to the world championships
Really?
in Milwaukee. And it was okay. I had to learn to swim in order to compete there. And my
Yeah.
husband said, you know that, right? And I was like, hmm. okay, I can do this. So I hired a coach and I said, because I only know do breaststroke. I was like,
Yeah,
I don't know,
yeah,
I can't
yeah.
breaststroke for whatever, half a mile.
Right.
And so I took lessons, and like you said, the breathing, it was like the breathing was the hardest, even though I'm a
Yes.
Pilates teacher and all about
Yeah.
breath, but having the face in the water and having to
Yeah.
blow bubbles and do
Yeah.
all this.
Yeah.
But I said, I'm going to do that. And I ended up doing an Ironman because of it.
Good for you.
So
Wow.
thank you.
There's a
But
lesson in there for everybody. Yeah.
yeah, listen up, everybody. I'd love tons of lessons. So we're
Yeah.
moving on from the swimming. So now by now, you know that Dierdre is about getting outside the comfort zone.
Yes.
Why do you think it's important to get outside of your comfort zone, Dierdre?
That's where life happens. That's where adventure happens. That's where you find out what you can do. I mean, in normal, ordinary, humdrum life, whatever you want to call that, we're never pushed to find out our limits in anything, really, you know. And and that's a scary thing when you start to find your limits. And to get outside of your comfort zone, you have to make friends with fear in all its forms. And it's yeah, it's I've, I've I've lost sight of your actual question. What did you ask me?
Don't worry, it's about the comfort zone. You know how to
A
you
comfort zone. Yeah, yeah. Well, the only way to get out there is the only way to do that is to challenge yourself. Do things that you don't normally do
Yeah.
or that scare you, you know? I mean, everybody says, "Oh, I could never do that. I could never be a rock climber. I'm afraid of heights." That is not true. Anybody with half a brain is afraid of heights, but it's not the height that they're afraid of. It's falling off.
Mhm.
And when you have a rope on and you know you can't fall off, you can start to push yourself because you know that that consequence is off the table. You're not going to fall. You might fall a few feet onto the rope. You might bang your elbow, but you're not going to fall and die. And once your brain and your mind, whatever you want to call that, really accept that, then your comfort zone gets a little bigger, and then you can start challenging yourself a little bit more. It's a fascinating process, especially coming at it in old age, if you will. I mean, I didn't start any of this stuff until I was, in my son's view, an old lady.
How old were
And,
you then?
well, I started climbing at 59. I didn't really go outdoors until my 60s with my friends.
Because you were running a marathon at 55 or started
Yeah,
running,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
I want to tie back a little bit to your two kids because they're a big part of your story.
yeah.
Is you have a son, Alex, and the daughter, Stasia.
Stacia.
Stasia.
Yeah.
Tell me about them.
Well, Stacia was first. She was born in Japan. And then 2 years later, when we moved back here, Alex was born. They're both adventurers. I guess we encouraged that, and we used to take them outdoors. We go camping a lot, and we, explore the outdoor world, which is what humans come from. The outdoor world is us, and when you live in a city, you lose sight of that. But we kind of lived in a city. Sacramento is a small city, but it's close to a lot of outdoor activities, and the mountains. The Sierra Nevada is 60 miles away, and so we did a lot of that. And they both turned out, and again, we didn't have television, so they didn't spend hours on a screen, and we didn't have computers and phones or anything back then, and so they didn't have all those screens to distract them and to make them lazy, if you will. So they were accustomed to going out and doing stuff, and boy, do they do stuff. My daughter's a long distance runner and a long distance biker, and she and her partner James have just finished biking across the country, 3,000 miles.
Oh, cool.
No support, nothing. Just the two of them biking with their camping stuff on their bikes. They camped all the way.
How long did it take them?
They took 3 months because they stopped here and there, to explore.
Yeah.
But it took 3 months, and it was an amazing adventure. And yeah, so they're both adventurers, and they've both taught me a lot about how to what's the word, to remake your life the way you want it, the way you want it, and that of course involves the outdoors, because the outdoors are us. Nature is our mother. Mother Nature, that's not just a phrase. I mean, nature is our mother. That's where we come from, and that's where we heal. You know, just taking a walk through a green park in your neighborhood can make you feel so better, so much better, so more relaxed, and it's amazing how much good the time in nature can do for us, and people just ignore it, and that's so sad.
Yep, I couldn't agree more with you. I'm an outdoor person too. Any chance I can get, I'm going outside. Right now, my son, wife, and granddaughter are visiting from Amsterdam.
Oh, nice.
And anytime the weather is somewhat decent, I'll pack her up and we're in the stroller. We're out heading to the next playground. I mean, she can't do much because she's 11, but she can still do, she can walk a little bit with one hand.
Mhm.
And we're always outdoors because I truly believe that too, that nature is so important, and
Yeah.
you're stuck inside so much and don't take
Right.
advantage of that.
Right.
And we don't have to do anything drastic or dramatic like we're
No.
talking about today. I mean, just a simple walk in the park is
Right.
amazing.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah. Just get out there. Yeah.
tell me
Anyway.
about tell me about your first run, because I've been, of course, reinvestigating you, as I told you. Tell me about the first run. I like some good stuff.
Well, first run. That's quite a story. But yeah, I'm assuming you mean my first organized run out there
I don't know.
where it was
Well, I
measured.
heard something about a dog and a flannel
Yeah.
shirt.
Yeah.
Yeah, I heard that
Well,
somewhere.
we had a big dog, and I was going through the horrible period of like 5, 6, 7 years where people were dying. People were dying, and I wound up with several houses to take care of alone,
Wow.
3 of which were on the East Coast, and I had to remodel them by long distance while teaching here in California. It was horrible. And so all day long I was at the college. I would teach. I come home, change my clothes, go in the office in our, our 4th bedroom was my office, and I would do all the estate work. My husband I had just divorced him, and that same month he died, just dropped dead. And the amount of paperwork was quite incredible. And I didn't have any help. I didn't have any time to even think about going out and finding help. I didn't know who I needed, what I needed. I just had to sit in there and do it. And so I did that every day for almost 2 years. I worked from like 5:30 in the morning till like 10 or 11 at night, nonstop. And then I would take the dog out for a walk to clear my head. And it was a Malamute. And she was very powerful and, long legs. And I had this, breathing issue that I've always had. So I knew, quote unquote, that I couldn't run with her, but I would try to keep up with her. And one night I came home and I burst through the door and I yelled, Alex, Alex. He was home. He was not living at home then, but he was home then to replenish his van stock, from my refrigerator. And so he was home. So I'm yelling, Alex, Alex, I just ran a mile. To me, that was Everest. I had climbed Everest. I knew I couldn't run. I couldn't breathe worth a darn. Getting up out of my chair and I would huff and puff. So I knew this was impossible. And I had just run a mile with the dog. I was absolutely ecstatic. Yeah, exactly. And he comes down the hall munching his cookie, saying, oh, way to go, Mom. Cool. If you can do a mile, you can do a mile and a half.
That's what I'm saying.
I was absolutely, what's the word? The word I'm looking for.
Flabbergasted.
I was undone, totally undone. I had climbed Everest, and he wasn't the slightest bit impressed. But I realized at the same time that he was right. If you can run a mile, you can run a mile and a quarter. You can run a mile and 2 houses, whatever. And so I started testing that. And that's what I meant before about your comfort zone. I had no comfort zone when it came to running. I couldn't do it, period. End of story.
Mm-hmm.
But what he said was absolutely true. And so I started testing it, pushing the limits. And within, 6 months, maybe 4 months, I found out about the Run to Feed the Hungry, for Thanksgiving, helps the food cause. And it's immense here in Sacramento. Like 20,000 people come out for this run. I had no idea. And so I told Alex, I'm going to sign up for this. And he said, well, sign me up too. I'll go with you. And so He did. And the night before the run, he came back from Spain where he had been competing in climbing competitions. And I'm thinking, okay, he just got back from Spain. He's got to be exhausted, you know. No, he got up and went with me. And I had my jeans on and my flannel shirt. And I had no clue how to be a runner. I just was running with the dog. That's all. I had no friends to, tell me how to do it, what you should wear, nothing. I was ignorant. And so I went with him to this race. And there's these 20,000 people and television and radio. They're all there and they're all wearing spandex and costumes. And I have my jeans with the big buckle and my flannel. But I did that race. It was a 6.2 miles, which is absolutely absurd for somebody who can't breathe. But I had, like I said, I think it was about 4 months. I just, pushing that limit little by little by little. And baby steps is all it takes. That's all I did was, the next day I do another block. 2 days later, I do another block. That's all. Baby steps. And I did that 6.2 mile run. It was a, 10K. Yeah, 10K. And the only reason I got through it really, I was almost able myself, but I still didn't have everything it would have taken. But my son had just gotten back from Spain. He ran next to me. He ran circles around me and ran backwards in front of me, telling me about his adventures in Spain. And if it hadn't been for that voice that I followed for those 6.2 miles, I might not have finished. I don't know. I don't know if I would have dug deep enough to find what I needed to finish, but he sure helped.
That is fantastic. And, I think this is a very good story for the listeners to say, you don't need to wear spandex. You don't. Some people, some women just don't want to wear those tight little outfitsies.
Yeah. And people say that I can't do XYZ sport because it's too expensive. None of the sports are expensive if you do it that way, and they can be very expensive if you want the beautiful costume and the special water bottle and the belt that you could do it without all that stuff.
Yep. I love it that he ran circles around you, which brings me a little bit to Alex too, because I can just picture it. Tell us about Alex. You told us about Stacia. Tell us about Alex.
Well, Alex was a climber from birth. That's all he ever wanted to do. He was born to climb. He had huge hands. He had powerful legs. The day he was born, he could stand up, which is completely unheard of. And people don't believe me, but I'm telling them, gospel truth here. The day, if you let him hold on to your little fingers like babies grasp all the time, if he could grasp your little fingers on your lap, he would stand up. And he couldn't stay that way, but he could get vertical because he had powerful thighs and he had these huge hands. And the first thing all the neighbors, when they started to come in to see the baby, they'd all look down the little basket, and everybody, to a person, everybody said the same thing. Not, oh, how cute, oh, how it looks just like mom, looks just like that. None of that. Oh, what big hands he has. That's the first thing everybody said. So he was born to climb, no doubt about that. And so that's all he ever wanted to do. Buildings, the school, the trees, whatever, grandma's shelves in the garage, whatever. He just wanted to go higher all the time. It made him a very, very hard kid to raise.
I can imagine.
Very hard.
It's also probably very scary when I think about, all the things that I know from the documentary, how he got there. So little, and he climbs everything without a rope.
Ropeless climbing takes up about 1% of his climbing.
1%. Okay.
Yeah.
Which is, you climb up really high, but there's nothing, like you explained earlier, that would catch you. It's like if you go down, you go down.
Yeah. If you fall while free soloing, it's all over. Yep.
Yeah. And that has happened to him, I think, once.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he did take a fall once and fortunately hit a bush, the big tree-like bush was sticking out of the wall. That slowed him, and then he hit a ledge and didn't go any further than that. Thank goodness.
Yeah, that's scary. Which brings us now to you. So you run, you do these races, you got this, you speak all these languages, you do all this cool stuff. And you're like, one day you wake up and you said, why don't I climb? Is that how it went?
Not exactly, no. I had no intentions of ever climbing. It scared the bejeebers out of me. But it was my son's entire world. And he would come home from an expedition and he'd tell me what they had done. Didn't understand any of it. Climbing is a jargon, a very complete language, a jargon all of its own. And I wouldn't understand. And he'd explain things to me, what this gear did, how to use this thing. But not doing it myself, I didn't get it. I didn't understand what he was talking about. And his friends would come over and they'd all sit around talking about their next expedition or their recent it was like a foreign language. And that put up a wall between us. We couldn't really talk deeply together about anything because that was his whole life. And so I wanted to try it. I wanted to experience it once at the gym, just so I could see what all this gear does, how you use it. When he's talking about this and that, what does it mean? So I had him take me to the gym, the climbing gym here in town, and he showed me how to tie in. And my expectation was that I would climb a half a wall because, as I knew, just like I knew I couldn't run, I was afraid of heights. Because I've been up in many skyscrapers in New York City, and I knew that if I looked out over the edge, my stomach would roil. And yeah, everybody knows that feeling, And so I knew, quote unquote, that I was afraid of heights. But as I explained before, you're not afraid of the height itself. You're afraid of falling off. So once I got tied in, I put that rope on, and I had the strongest belayer in the world on the other end of my rope, and I knew that. And I knew that he could handle anything, any stupidity that I might do. I knew he could handle it. So I started going up the wall, and I wound up climbing the whole wall, and it was exciting, and I loved it. And I looked down, and I was not afraid to look down. I figured I would be. And then I did like 12 climbs that day, which is a lot, which is extraordinary.
Hands are hurting.
Yeah, exactly. And then he left on another expedition off to Borneo, I think. Borneo or Siberia, one of those. And I was home alone and thinking about that. And I wanted to go back, but I didn't know anybody. I didn't know anything. I didn't even know how to attach the stupid harness. The harness is not intuitive. Nope. And so it took me months, and about a couple of months. And I finally got up the courage to go back by myself. Mm-hmm. And then I started making friends, and they started teaching me stuff and taking me outdoors, and it just kind of developed.
The climbing community is a very friendly community and I shared with you that I used to rock with my son. Yeah. Mm-hmm. He was going to the local climbing gym here in Maryland, and I had to drive him there. So most parents just sat around, and I'm like, why would I sit around?
Exactly.
I can learn how to boulder, and to help the listeners. When Dierdre went up on the wall, you have to wear a harness, because the harness is attached to a ring on top of the wall, which then goes down to the person which you mentioned, belay. It's like the person that holds you basically on the rope. Mm-hmm. They make sure that you have enough slack on the rope, that it's tight enough.
And especially if you fall, they take up all the slack so that you don't fall far. Yeah.
Yep. And so that's your safety person down there. And it's a really important function. Yes. And then there's the other version of climbing, which part of what Alex does, which is a form of bouldering, where you have no harness, no rope, and you just use your body's balance and your hand strength, your hip mobility, especially for us women, and your leg strength to crawl up and climb up those mountains, or those man-made boulders, either inside or especially inside, and you have these little nobbins where you hold with your hands. And this requires a lot of strength, balance, and flexibility. And so if you've never climbed, so you have an idea of what that would look like. And that Dierdre went up 12 times, boy, that's hard. Just saying.
Yeah. It is. Yeah, it was. I was sore afterwards. The next day, my hands hurt, my forearms burned, Yeah.
Yep. And so then you said, this is great. I have this new community. I want to climb a mountain. So what was the next progression until you get to El Cap?
Well, it didn't start with a mountain. And my friends started taking me outdoors. There's all kinds of river gorges around in the foothills of the Sierra Nevada, and it's not far from here. So that we would do that for a day, go out and call it cragging. You go out to the crag and just go up and down, up and down all day. And then after a few months of that, they decided they'd take me to do a multi-pitch climb, which means that you go up and you don't come down. You go up from that one, and then you go up more, and then you go up more, and that's a different kind of climbing altogether. It's a different mindset and totally different fear level, because you're up there and you're not coming down. You're going up more, and it was terrifying the first time. Absolutely terrifying. I was paralyzed with fear when we got to that first level, the first ledge where the first anchor was. I mantled up. I pushed myself up and turned around, sat down on the ledge, and I looked down, and I was absolutely paralyzed with fear. I couldn't do anything. And all my friends are bouncing around this. It was a huge ledge. They're bouncing around, moving ropes and moving gear. And then here, Dierdre, hold this. And I'd say, oh, I can't. I couldn't do anything. But when they got all ready to do the second pitch, the second rope length up from there, I rallied. I talked myself out of that. And there are two different kinds of fear in life. One is real fear, where you're in real danger. And the other one is perceived fear, where we think we're in danger, but we're really not. I was in no danger up there, but I was afraid of being that high. I was afraid because I didn't yet understand fully what all the gear did and how to use it. I was still ignorant. All these things make you afraid, but there's really no reason to be afraid because you're totally safe. I was safe. I knew that. I knew I was safe. They're bouncing around without their harnesses up there. They took them off to have lunch or whatever. And so I knew, I had to fight those two levels, the two kinds of fear, and I had to talk myself out of the perceived fear and tell myself, okay, well, they're going up. I have to go with them because you can't just turn around and go down. You got to have ropes and partners. So I went with them, and it was amazing, just amazing.
Yeah, and the climbing that Dierdre describes right now is like you heard us. The first part was you climb up a wall, you come back down. When you do multiple climbs back to back, you have somebody that is the lead, and they have a lead rope that they hook into existing, or they hammer depending on what mountain you're.
No more. Yeah.
No more?
No.
So how do you get to the second part then? Is simply supporting each other?
No. This was traditional climbing, which means you use gear that you put into a little crack in the rock and it expands, and that will hold you, or you tie it around something that's up there, a horn, they call it, of rock. And then you make the anchors yourself. There's no other anchors up there. So in the Sierra Nevada, it's mostly trad climbing, traditional climbing, where you take the gear, you put it in, and then the person who comes up behind you takes it out, puts it back on their harness. So that's what we were doing. We were doing traditional climbing.
Yeah. So for those, I don't know how many people know that much about climbing or want to know super duper details. I think they want to know more. What happened next?
Well, I got to the top. And I was quite excited. Yeah, quite excited that I had talked myself through it, as it were. And son of a gun, there really was nothing to be afraid of, because all my friends that day knew what they were doing. I didn't so much, but I trusted them, and there's a lot of trust involved in climbing. You have to really trust your partner because your life is in their hands, and vice versa. And I knew that I wasn't experienced enough to belay for anybody that day. They wouldn't let me, and rightly so, because I wasn't experienced enough. But I am now.
So then when was the decision made that you climb El Cap? And I think the first time you did it with Alex, is that right?
Yeah, that was years later. Years later, maybe 9 years later.
Which means,
no,
how
6 years later.
How did you prepare to get to that point? What was your...
Well, I climbed every year, with my friends, and once in a while with my son. And my son took me. Actually, can you see the photos behind me?
Yeah.
All of those photos are the peaks that I did with my son. and
Ah,
they're all in Yosemite, almost all
okay.
in Yosemite. And they're extraordinary peaks. They're huge. They're far from, the car, but they're not very difficult in terms of climbing. I could climb them, and he knew where to go. He knew where to take me because he knows everything out there. It's like the back of his hand. So I did all these climbs, and I was getting more and more experience and more knowledgeable about what do you call it, strategy and how to do it. That's not the word I'm looking for, but it'll come. And so they were making this movie about El Cap, and I didn't know. I didn't know he was going to free solo it. No free soloist ever tells anyone that they're going to do that, because their mind has to be totally clear to do that. So when I found out afterwards, I was like, oh, okay. If he could do that, I wonder if maybe he could get me, lead me up that wall. Because we had done another climb, I think it's right back here, this one. We had done this climb, it's called Royal Arches. And it's on the same side of the valley. The Yosemite Valley is a very long valley, and all these huge, monstrous walls line it on both sides. And it's on the same side, same wall, basically, as El Capitan. And we did that in okay time. We did it like up and down at like 9 o'clock in the morning till dinner time.
Yeah.
And it's very, very long. It's 16 pitches, 15 pitches. And 15, total rope lengths. And I followed him up it like a little puppy. He says, we go, we go. I just follow him around. But when you go with Alex, you go really fast, because he holds all the speed records on everything, and he won't ever like sleep on the wall. That's just too much work. You have to carry all that water, you have to carry all that stuff. So he just goes up and down. You sleep in your own bed. I didn't realize that was unusual.
It was maybe you didn't realize it was the plan when you went. You're like, wait a minute.
So I asked him one day when he was coming through my house, restocking his van again. I asked him if someday you might, lead me up El Cap. And I really didn't expect him to say yes, because of how I climb. I'm not a very good climber. I never will be. I started late. I'm not, I don't have the arm strength and all that stuff. And I don't do it as often as you would need to get really good. So I didn't really expect him to say, but he said, yeah, sure. But you have to learn how to jug. Now, jugging is using those metal handles that clip onto the rope to climb the rope, basically. Your feet are on the wall for ballast, for balance, but your hands are on the rope on these things, on these gizmos called jumars. And he said that, and then he left on another expedition. And so I started asking all of my friends, what's a jumar? What's a jug? And they some of them knew. And I went online, like I said, the sum of human knowledge is at our fingertips here online. And so I found out all about it, and I found out who had them, and I got myself a pair and started training. And I trained for 18 weeks to do that. And fortunately, we had friends who are rangers in the valley, so they have a house, and I could stay in their house. So I had a kitchen, I had a bed, that's a bathroom. And so I went for 18 weeks, 3 days a week. I would stay 3 days. First day I would do cardio, big high hikes on the sides of those walls. And the other 2 days I would go out. There are lots of fixed ropes that are always hanging on the sides of some of these cliffs. And there are 2 sets of these on El Capitan. So I actually practiced on El Cap. And I did 18 weeks of that nonstop. And I figured 18 weeks, that's what I did for a living. Our semester was 18 weeks. And in 18 weeks, you can master a little French or a little math or a little science or whatever you want to learn, right? You can take a course. So I figured 18 weeks would get me there. And it did. It was just enough. I had just trained enough to do it, and come down in a day, which is extraordinary. I didn't realize then how extraordinary that is. I found out later the people who first did that climb that we did took 4 days.
Wow.
And that's normal for that route that we did. And then I came down and I went to bed like at 2 a.m. that night. And next morning, like 8 or 9, I got up and I was absolutely fine. Absolutely fine. That was a big surprise. So apparently I had trained just enough.
Because you would assume that when you hear that, okay, people usually take 4 days to do what we did in one day. You
Right.
must have been crazy sore, hands falling off,
Yeah,
forearms on
yeah,
fire, neck
yeah.
burning, or whatever
I,
else.
I was during it. I was during the climb,
Mm-hmm.
but I had trained enough so that my body could recover enough, and that's all it took.
You
Coming
must have,
down, coming down was harder than going up, but not on the arms and the hands and the upper body. It was harder on the head. It was more scary than going up, and on the my lower half, my brakes, because it's all very steep. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And you know what? This is just such a feeling of think of pride that you must have felt afterwards about what you just had done.
Not pride exactly, but satisfaction. I had learned how to do it. I had taught myself everything I needed to know. I had
Uh-huh.
trained for enough time, and I had figured it all out alone, myself.
Mhm.
And then I went and did it, and immense satisfaction comes from that. Immense, yeah.
So what came after El Cap?
Well, after El Cap, I had surgery on my foot, massive surgery on my left foot, and basically it was ripped apart and put back together with a lot of titanium, and so I was down for like a year,
Okay.
and then COVID hit, and so there was like 4 years where I didn't do anything,
Hmm.
nothing at all. I couldn't, couldn't get together with my friends, and, couldn't go out to eat. COVID.
Yeah.
And my 70th birthday was coming up during COVID, and I couldn't go to a restaurant with everybody. Couldn't have a party at my house. So what do
Yeah,
I want to
that's a
do?
bummer for sure.
Yeah. So I thought to myself, I want to find after the surgery, all the limping from the surgery, that whole year threw up my other knee on my
Mhm.
other side, and so I'm working with a lot of deficits right now, physical deficits, and I wanted to find out if I still could do it. But I didn't have a partner. Alex wasn't around. He was in Europe or something, and I didn't want to do it alone, obviously. But the descent route, the way everybody, there are 105 routes that climb up El Cap. Everybody who goes up any of those 105 routes comes down the same way, and it's called the descent route. And there are what do you call fixed ropes in the middle where it's really vertical. There are six fixed ropes in the middle. The top is so scary, and the bottom is scrambling through woods and over boulders, and it's very, very demanding physically.
Yeah.
But I knew I could do it because I had come down that way with my son,
Mhm.
you know, and so I decided to go up that way. I
Mhm.
wanted to, like I said, we did it in one day, up and down. We got down by 2 a.m. So I hadn't slept on the wall, and I had spent many years with the kids, without the kids, standing in El Cap meadow, looking up at the headlamps, watching the little lights go up. And as night falls, you could see them setting up camp up there on those portalages, where they sleep on the wall. I always wanted to try sleeping up there,
Mhm.
and not always, but as a climber, in my climbing life. But I didn't with Alex. So I decided to climb El Cap, take the descent route up El Cap, because you can do it in either direction, and then camp up on the top. So
Mhm.
that's what we did. There were 11 of us who went up,
Oh, how
and
fun.
me and 10 friends, and we all camped on top. It was amazing.
How fun. And what a great way to celebrate your 70th birthday.
Oh, I will never top that as a birthday party. Never.
That is amazing. Are there any favorite spots aside from that place that you're like to climb?
Oh, so many. Oh, so many.
Okay.
I want to go back. I just this summer, this fall, I was in northern Italy and Switzerland, the Italian part of Switzerland, which is in the Alps, and in Greece, and I was climbing in all this. I really want to go back to the Dolomites in northeastern Italy.
Yep.
between Italy and Austria, Italy and Switzerland.
Yeah.
So beautiful. And the climbing is the kind I love, because rock is different everywhere you go, totally different. And I don't have a whole lot of experience, vast like my son, but I've experienced many different kinds of rocks. And the Dolomites are me. There are things everywhere on the rock. There are little things to hold, little holes, put your finger in, little ledges, put your toes in. There are things all over. That doesn't necessarily make it easy, but it makes it more approachable, more doable.
Mhm.
And I loved it. And I unfortunately was only there for 4 days, and then I moved on to Switzerland, and that was wonderful too. But I loved the Dolo. I'd love to go back there. I would love to climb in Japan. When we lived in Japan, I wasn't a climber. I'd never heard of it. But now, through my son, I know that there's really excellent climbing there. And I would love to go back and I lived there for 4 years. So it's kind of feels like home.
Yep.
And I'd love to go back there and climb. And I'd love to go back to Greece and climb. Greek climbing is outstanding. Yeah, so my list is very long.
There's lots of things to do. Now, one of the
Right.
questions I asked some of my listeners of what they might want to ask you, and somebody said, what about her fear of injuring herself during the climbs and impacting the rest of her life? How does she feel about that?
I don't really do anything that dangerous or that risky. I mean, you can mitigate most of the risk in climbing. Yes, things do happen. Rocks do break, and things unexpected happen. And you can't do anything about those. But you can mitigate all the rest. And climbing is far, far safer than, say, mountain biking. Far safer. It's safer than surfing, for sure. It's a very safe sport if you do it that way. I mean, not if you're free soloing like my son's, extraordinary climb, but on ropes with a partner, with a belayer. There's very little that can damage you.
Mhm.
And yes, I always think about that. I want to live to see my grandkids grow up. I have a brand new granddaughter, and I want to be around for a long
Who
time.
has one? Your daughter's
My son,
Alex. Okay.
Alex, yeah, had his first. So, yeah, we mitigate those risks as much as possible. Our
Okay.
goal, a climb isn't over when you get to the top. A climb is only over when you get back down to the ground. And that's always our goal. Me and my friends, and me and Alex too. He's a very safe climber, very, very safe.
Yeah. So that means also that ties in with the next question, the fear of aging. Do you feel that getting older stops you in any way? I mean, from what we
No.
heard so far, it's like, no, that's already answered, but I just wanted to put it out there for the person who asked.
No, that is such a non-issue. We are told to fear aging. That's our culture. And it's so wrong. There are so many cultures that don't teach us that. No, we are taught that, and it's mostly through the pharmaceutical industry. We are expected to take this drug for this drug to fall asleep, this drug to wake up, this drug to lose weight, this drug. None of that is necessary if you embrace Mother Nature and go out and do what your body is meant to do. None of that is necessary. I mean, yes, of course, there are illnesses that require drugs. Yes, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about a normal person, a normal body. It's just so sad what people will believe without thinking about it. I mean, taking drugs is not natural. Taking drugs, ingesting anything from a what do you call it?
Bottle.
Not a factory, but a laboratory. Ingesting anything made in a laboratory is not normal. It is not natural, and we shouldn't do it. And we know this, but advertisements hammer at us from birth till death. If we have that screen on all the time.
Mhm.
And most people do. And I'll never understand why people buy into that. Because there's nothing to fear about aging if you keep doing stuff.
Being active, that's what I always say. Don't sit on your tuchus and do nothing.
Yes. If you sit and watch TV and knit or whatever, or crochet like my mother used to do, you're not going to be in very good shape. You can't be. You can't be. Yeah, that's just such a non-issue. Do I fear aging? Absolutely not. I embrace it. Aging is better than the alternative, not aging, right? I mean, my husband died at 55. There's a lesson in there. He just keeled over. He was taking drugs for this, drugs for that, that I didn't know about. But no, I do not fear aging. Aging is a natural, normal process, and we should all embrace it. And we should keep doing stuff while we do.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, like, when you think at our ages, things will break down, like your
Of
foot.
course, of
I
course.
have my knee. I have to stop running marathons because my knee's
Right.
not liking it, but I can do a whole bunch of
Right.
other things.
Exactly. You can change. You can adapt. You can adapt with your body. Exactly.
Exactly. And so it's, we were talking about climbing today, and my daughter recently just started climbing again after back in the days we all climbed together. And
Okay.
she about a year ago, she's like, my mom, you got to come up and climb and, bring my husband now of 10 years, which I climbed before him. I was like, we got to go. And he's like, oh, I'm too big. And I was like, no, you'll love it. Just like,
Big. Nobody's too big.
he's
Okay.
6'4", and I was like, you're going to be great. You're going to be fine. But it's that just doing, and it's not about that we always have to succeed. And what I like about your story is that that you are doing the research, you're doing the work to learn about what you're going to do next, instead of just there's nothing wrong. I mean, I'm definitely happy that people hire me as their coach and show them how to do things, but it's you can show somebody only so much. The rest the person has to do.
It has to be up to them. Yeah.
And that's what you're showing our audience, that this is the way to go, and that anybody has time to do it and can do it if they put their mind to it. Now,
and baby steps is the answer to just about anything. I mean, you can do anything by tiny increments, baby steps.
You must have listened to one of my podcasts, because all I talk about is baby steps.
Oh, no, I haven't. But it's true. Yeah,
this is my thing. It's like, and I did a little video of my granddaughter walking with her little walking cart thingy. And then, let's go. She goes down and she tries to get back up on the chair to go standing position. And I titled it, "This is what baby steps looks like. You go a little bit, you fall down,
you
try
fall
again.
Yep.
And then you get a little bit better." And all these. Now, if somebody is trying to figure out who they are, what they want to do, because that's what I oftentimes hear for the women that are in their 50s or 60s. It's like, so here I am, I'm an empty nester. And I've been a good mom and did all the kid stuff and whatnot. And I have not made time for me or to find my own passion. What would you tell?
One very simple way is journaling. Start writing in the journal. 5 minutes a day. That's all it takes. And once your brain and your hand and your mind catch on to it, then it will expand to a lot more than 5 minutes a day. But when you start, baby step, 5 minutes a day, journaling. And the only rule about journaling is to not stop for those 5 minutes. Just keep writing, whether it's with a pen or on your computer or however you do it. But it has to involve your hands. Dictating doesn't do it. It's a different brain function totally. So journaling is a journal is the best shrink in the world. You have a very capable shrink at your fingertips, and that's all it takes, really. I mean, it will be a surprise when you start. It will be a surprise what comes through. I mean, even if you're writing about your Aunt Tilly's recipe for fudge for 5 minutes, your mind in the background is thinking about your life. And you'll be amazed at what comes out in the journal. And that's the best way I know to explore who you are, what you want, and what you need.
This is great. Just let it pour out. No censorship, right?
Right. Exactly.
This is amazing. So based on your life, based on what you've experienced, based on the things you've done and felt, what would you tell other women that are listening to your podcast, and they're not necessarily want to climb, but what can they do in their life to move forward, as I like to call it, to follow their dreams, to take life by the hand?
Well, the answer to that is endless. I mean, life is filled with adventure, filled with opportunities, all kinds of things go on in life. You need to find out about them. You need to start journaling. What do I love? And a recommendation for that is go back to when you were 5. What did you love then? Chances are you'll still love it. Did you love climbing trees when you were a kid? Oh, maybe you're a climber. I did, Did you love music when you were a kid? Maybe you should learn to play the piano, whatever it is, whatever you loved when you were 4 and 5 and 6, explore that. That's the best way to start, is to go back to your roots. You're a different person now than you were then. And you have learned a lot more, and you have much more experience. But the you that's inside is still you, and you need to reconnect with that.
Mhm.
And the best way I know to do that is journaling. A good friend is also a good outlet for that. But a journal is far more private, and it's far more danger-free. There's no judging. Nobody's going to judge you. Nobody's going to say, "Oh, you shouldn't," fill in the blank, whatever. Like friends can do. So a journal is like the ideal way to explore that.
I agree with that. Like you said, it's private. Nobody judges you. Nobody says, "Oh,
Right,
what do you think?" And or you don't have to defend. You write something that you
right,
think is
right,
stupid.
right,
You don't have to say, "Oh my God, they think I'm
right,
stupid."
right.
Uh,
When I was thinking about climbing El Cap, for example, I didn't tell anybody. I knew what they would have said, because the people who I taught with at the college, they were always saying, "Dierdre, you're crazy. You're going to get hurt. You're too old for this." I would have had a lot of that, and I didn't need that. I needed encouragement, and my son was very encouraging. So yeah, it's a lengthy process. It can be, or you could luck out and just find it right away in your journal, or your whatever. But
yeah.
I
Now
have
you
I, I
also
I
you
have
also
another
published
appointment. Yeah, I have
yeah
another appointment.
you also first published your first book, The Sharp End of Life: A Mother's Story, which we haven't talked about today. So she wrote a book, and Deirdre probably started it by journaling.
Yes, indeed, I did. Indeed, I did. Um, I dug back into all my old journals when I was writing that book. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
So we leave a link in the show notes for you guys, so you can get your hands on the book and can
sure.
purchase it. And your
And
documentary will come out in,
uh-huh.
do we know
Next year,
yet?
2020, 23. It'll be out in
Climbing is
23.
Life.
Yes.
Ooh, I'll be on the lookout for that one.
The trailer is out now. I think you can put the trailer address up on your thing. The trailer is beautiful. She did a really nice job, the filmmaker. So I'm assuming the film's going to be just as lovely.
I think I saw the trailer, if I'm not mistaken. Is it on YouTube? On
It's
website?
on Vimeo.
Yes, I think I saw that then.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah,
Deirdre, what is one question that you wish somebody would ask you during an interview that nobody has asked you yet?
I've done so many interviews that
What is one
they
thing that
pretty much hit on everything. I'll
is
keep thinking about that.
good? Because you have had so many interviews, and I know I can imagine that there's something where you said, "Dag nabbit, why didn't anybody ask me? Doesn't anybody want to know about that?"
So far, that hasn't
Let's
happened, but I'll keep thinking about it.
keep thinking about it. So, with finally, how can people reach you and find out more about you, connect with you, and follow you?
Instagram is probably the easiest and the fastest. Is Dierdre_Wolownick_Hannold. Most of my previously published books and articles and essays and stuff are all under the name of Hannold, because that was my married name.
Mhm.
So Dierdre Wolownick Hannold with underscores. That's Instagram, or just my. If you want to get to know me and know what I'm about, read my blog. The blog is at deirdrew.us. Very simple. deirdrew.us. And you can read about all kinds of different topics. I write about whatever I'm thinking about that week or month or whatever. So I hope to see you there. You can sign up so you can always get notices about the blog, notifications. So those are the best ways.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for coming on the show today, Dierdre. It was a pleasure getting to know you and chatting with you about your life and your adventures.
You're welcome, and thanks for inviting me.
My pleasure. So, guys, I hope you enjoyed this interview and you will take advantage of all the links that we shared with you. And when the episode airs on Instagram, or if you're on Facebook, also YouTube, where we also show the video, because Dierdre showed us all the pictures that if you listen, you can see. You can also watch the video that comes with the audio as a separate piece. But we want to know what you think about her story, how it inspired you, how it made you perhaps take the next step in your life, and what that step may be. So we do want to hear from you. You will have all the links that we talked about today in the show notes. So no need to panic and worry that you didn't quite get it while you're driving or doing whatever it is you're doing. It will be there for you. And I hope to see you next time here on the Pursue Your Spark podcast. Ciao.
Bye-bye.